Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform for thought leaders to share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in real world. I'm your host, Helen Yu. Today's topic is Gen AI innovation for enterprise agility. I'm thankful for Intel's sponsorship for this episode, CXO Spice. And now let's welcome our special guest, Arijit Sengupta, the founder and CEO of Able. Hi, Arijit. Great to reconnect with you.
Great to meet you. Great to speak with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. So before we dive into our discussion today, could you share your tech journey and tell us more about Able? And then, by the way, why did you name the company Able?
Yeah, so Able's tagline is actually, I am able. I don't know whether you can see it. And one of the things I've been obsessed with for a very long time is how can we empower everyone to be able to create AI that serves their needs, right? AI should be empowering. AI should not start from a perspective of how can you replace people. It should be how do we give people superpowers? And that's been the focus of Able. I started my AI journey actually all the way back in 1995 when I came to Stanford University to study AI. It was one of the best places to study that, and ended up starting one AI startup called Beyond Core, which ended up becoming Salesforce Einstein Discovery. Ended up writing a book called AI is a Waste of Money based on 1,000 AI projects I had done at that time. That led to the Harvard Business School bringing me back in to co-create and co-teach the first AI course in the MBA program at Harvard. And then started Able to actually solve these problems. And then the generative AI trend came in. And, on one hand, you think, well, generative AI, anybody can do it. But in the enterprise, it's not that easy. How do I set up the right governance? How do I get access to the right data in my enterprise? All of a sudden, it becomes a complex, expert-driven process. And we have been focused on how to make it possible for any business user to do that on their unique data.
Wow, that's really inspiring. And that, your journey alone can have another episode of CXO Spice. I can't wait chatting with you about that another day. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love what you said. I am able, right? That's just such a perfect name for the new era. So you're right. Based on my recent conversation with CIO and CTOs, transitioning AI from pilot phase to scalable, cost-effective production in the cloud seems challenging. So how has Able's partnership with Intel enhanced Able's ability to deliver rapid results to enterprise customers?
Right. So our approach has always been, how can you bring the entire tech stack that is needed to solve the problem right inside the customer store? Because enterprise customers don't want to move their data out of their control, right? Whatever cloud they're on, Google, AWS, Azure, just bring it up in that environment. Now, we use serverless techniques because that's the most efficient way of doing this. And we'll talk about that later. We have recently published a benchmark with Intel showing how 55 times cost improvement can be delivered by using serverless. We'll talk about that later. But to do that, when you bring up these serverless instances, they're Intel processors. On all three clouds, you actually don't have GPUs there, for example. And we work with Intel because you have to do a lot with very little. And Intel has put in a lot of innovation over the years, building software innovation, building in the processors, various capabilities to optimize for many of these models. They also take a lot of open source libraries and optimize them for Intel processors, right? So we work with Intel closely to benchmark our capabilities. They gave us a lot of advice on, hey, would you like to try this tech that we have? What about this optimization? And the team tried them, and we constantly benchmarked. And at this point, we have been working with Intel for at least 3 years. Worked with them across multiple generations of their Xeon processors.
Well, that's also such a fascinating journey. And speaking of serverless first approach, right? When you pair that with Intel processor, tell us more about the business impact it really has made on enterprise clients.
So serverless first, think of it as when the internet was first created, the promise was that you would buy internet like you buy electricity, right? You would just pay for it when you use it. But the reality very quickly became that you are renting electricity generators. You're not really buying electricity. Like you go in and buy and rent a server for several hours. You're paying for that server whether or not you're using it. In fact, for data science workloads, a lot of organizations go in and reserve servers just to keep expensive servers around because they don't want to wait to get a server when they need it. Now, what serverless does is it truly is buying the electricity instead of buying the generator. So when you are putting in a workload, your workload goes on a processor, on an Intel processor, comes up for a few minutes, gets the workload done, and then disappears. Now, the actual servers keep running, but from a consumer's perspective, that workload just came on for a few seconds, few minutes, you paid for it, shut down, done. You're not paying for anything excepting when you're actively using it. And that server now gets used by somebody else. So what you're doing is you're taking these scarce resources and truly sharing it across many, many organizations completely securely. Because when serverless comes up, it is actually coming up inside your VPC, inside your virtual private cloud. So all of the things you've done to secure your cloud, you can bring your own key and encrypt it. All of those protections actually apply to the serverless capabilities. But at the same time, you're sharing these resources across many, many organizations very, very efficiently. So that has been one of our focus because one of our key concerns was AI is very power hungry. It's very, and I don't mean power hungry from a science fiction apocalypse kind of a thing, but power hungry in terms of electricity, in terms of processors. These are expensive resources, and we only have so much of them. So using these serverless techniques actually allows you to kind of share these resources with others and actually do things at a much more cost-efficient way, and thus the 55x cost reduction in total cost of ownership that we were able to demonstrate for Gen AI workloads.
Wow, that's a dream for every organization, right? If you think about it, I only want to pay what I consume rather than just paying for actual, just for, for in case I need it. By the way, I noticed that you discussed Gen 2 through, Gen 5, fifth generation of latest Xeon 6 benchmark report, right? Tell us more why the benchmark multiple generations of Intel processors is important. And then what specific optimizations and innovations does Intel provide through the collaboration with Able across data management, analytics, and AI model training and inference?
So quite often people, when they benchmark, they only benchmark on the latest processors. What Intel recognized, and it was very important that they recognized this, that, customers have many, many generations of Intel processors. And one of the concerns they have right now is that, can they do Gen AI on CPUs? Do they have to have GPUs to do Gen AI? And what that means is perfectly valid Intel processors that they already have, can we unlock the value of those processors for Gen AI workloads? So we deliberately went all the way back to second generation Intel processors, and we were benchmarking on an end-to-end retrieval augmented generation use case. What that means is, this is the most common use case in enterprises today. I ask a question, the system finds enterprise data corresponding to that question, sends it to the language model to summarize, and gives me the answer back. Again, instead of doing some kind of a geeky thing like the second token speed, like nobody understands that. Let's look at the time from the user request coming in to the response coming back to the user. And can we do that in less than a minute? And even on second generation Intel processors, we did it in less than a minute. Now, of course, the later processors are much, much faster, right? You can get it to 20 seconds approximately if you use the latest capabilities, right? And that has been the best part of Intel, that we could work with them to collaborate on various optimizations they have had over the years. So, for example, AVX 512 is a technology that they use, VNNI, etc. There's a lot of different optimizations Intel has done. Sometimes it's surprising how much software assets along with their hardware assets they have. And having the Intel labs test our performance and providing us feedback, try this, try that, that was very helpful. Intel even optimized Python, if I remember correctly, so that Python was running faster. Redshift was running faster. It was fascinating to see how much optimization Intel had done through the various generations. And the labs helped us use whatever could help us make things faster.
Well, that's a true partnership, right? I mean, I did not realize, how you collaborate with each other and even through the validation and testing and kudos to both of you. Your Able's impact from AI in 30 days program caught my eyes the other day. So tell us more about it. Have you seen any measurable business impact on that yet?
Yeah, actually, talking about close collaboration with Intel, that was another collaboration with Intel. So we used to talk about how our mission was delivering value, delivering business impact from AI in 30 days. And I still remember talking to Intel about this, and they're like, well, that sounds like a great idea, because Gartner and others were talking about how most AI projects were, getting 10% success rates and take 9 months and stuff.
Yeah.
So the point was, if you can make AI work that fast, isn't that a great thing? And Intel actually sponsored 25 case studies across industries, across use cases, sales, marketing, operations, where we went in and we started on day zero implementing Able on the customer's cloud. And in less than 30 days, in some cases in less than 5 days, we got the whole project done and delivered value.
Wait a minute, less than 5 days?
Yeah, there were some like extreme examples there too. And the reason for it, actually, by the way, recently, Carolyn at Gartner Analytics Summit, they talked about how we got a project done in 2 days.
Wow.
And Verizon talked about how we got a project done in 7 days, right?
Wow.
These are Gen AI projects being done on their clouds. But the reason for this is when you have built your technology for that speed of implementation and speed of iteration, the results are outstanding. Because what happens in most organizations when they're doing an enterprise Gen AI use case, first, a bunch of experts are bringing together a bunch of disparate technology to work together. They have to go in and figure out what the user is trying to do some complex ideation work. Then they do some prototyping. Then they try different settings. Hey, I should try these settings of vector DBs and those settings of models and these kind of processors. In Able, what happens is all those things have already been done. We already have all the technology for all the use cases you might have. Structured data, unstructured data, graph data. You're trying to do document summarization. You're trying to do natural language querying. You want to do augmented analytics. You want to do predictions. Doesn't matter. It works. If you want to try different settings, because it's serverless, I can have 50 different configurations running in parallel and seeing how end users like it. So you're doing the experimentation much faster.
Wow.
So the entire premise of this is, if AI is a heavy lift, if it takes a lot of expertise and 9 months with 10% probability of success, you're going to see very little AI, and you're only going to see AI made by the few for the many. Whereas if you can make AI something that users can just try, just start chatting. One of our common things is just start chatting. And you start chatting and you see, you like it, you don't like it, give it a thumbs up, give it a thumbs down, edit the response in place. That becomes our improvement data. We do learning, we do fine tuning.
With the assumption that safety or data privacy is not a concern, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but you design that in. So in Able, because we are running in the customer's cloud and we are doing this serverless, we actually don't have a data privacy concern. The data never in the cloud. When we use small models, when you're using a large model, you're actually still sending the data to a provider, right?
Yeah.
In the case of small models, we are running it completely inside the customer's cloud. And that's something we showed with Intel, where we have the vector DB and the small model running on CPUs, no GPUs, just CPUs, serverless on the customer side.
Well, that's brilliant. Yeah.
But when you make these things that simple and that fast, the art of the possible changes. So for 4 years running now, we have run this contest at UC Berkeley at the AI Summit there, where we take high school kids, history majors, and MBAs and put them up against expert data scientists. Now, the high school kids with 90 minutes of training, all 4 years, have beaten the expert data scientists using their favorite tools.
Wow.
That's what makes any technology sticky. When anyone can do it. If you think about the Intel,
I totally agree with you, right? When we can democratize AI, and then it's not just in the hands of few scientists, and that's where we can start seeing the business impact.
yeah, and democratizing means the users who
Yeah.
can do it. It
Mm.
also means what platforms. If I
Mhm.
have to wait for a GPU, and sometimes I have to wait for 6 hours for a GPU
Yeah.
nowadays. Can I run it on any processor I want? And going
Yeah.
back to why we did it for second generation Intel as well. Everybody's got enough Intel processors. So now you can run it everywhere and anyone can use it.
It's fascinating when we deployed this chatbot at a global financial institution, it would take so many hours for the AI model to be trained, right? By the time we put the data in, algorithm in, and waiting for half a day sometimes. So thank you for the innovation to make these things happen. Well, let's talk a little bit about Intel's role in optimizing software and hardware components contribute to streamlining the AI workflow from data ingest to deployment at scale.
Yeah. So we actually work with Intel. So Able starts from raw data in the customer's cloud, right? So you might have it in Snowflake, you might have it in Databricks, you might have it in BigQuery, you might have PDF files, markdowns, whatever. So we work on actually analyzing that data where it is, where it sits, figuring out, can you do AI with it? Going in and building these models, doing the fine tuning. For predictive models, we build a model from scratch, optimizations, then deploying the models, again, serverless on the cloud. So when Intel worked with us, they really did work on every piece of this. Like they literally look at our entire, like they don't quite get access to our code, but it runs on containers on Intel Labs. So Intel can see the performance characteristics. And then we go in and we add different Intel libraries, try to benefit from it. So every piece of that end-to-end stack has had Intel's help in making them optimal for CPUs. And due to that, we have been able to publish some pretty outstanding results. For example, on data analysis, we have had customers seeing 1,000x cost improvement compared to using traditional methods. Because
Wow.
AI, think of it this way.
Mhm.
In the time a human can ask about 5 questions, an AI can ask 1,000,000 questions.
Wow.
Now, things like Snowflake, BigQuery, Databricks, they're
Mhm.
charged you by how long the system is up trying to answer your question. So when a human goes in and asks a question, it actually sits around for a little bit of time and you get charged for it in the case of Snowflake, for example. We are just cramming 1,000,000 questions in the time a human would have spent to ask 5 questions, and you're still getting charged for 5 questions because the underlying platforms don't actually charge you by the question. They charge you by the length of time the server is up to answer your question. That's how you optimize to save the customer money. And I actually think to also save the planet. Because every time you make these workloads optimal, you're actually reducing wastage of electricity, reducing wastage of resources, reducing the number of new computers we have to build, new processors we have to build, the parts of the planet we'll have to dig up to make these processors happen. So using things more efficiently saves the customer money and saves the planet at the same time.
I love that, Arjit, because it's really about the end goal is to build a sustainable future, right? This not only speed up the performance and if improve efficiency, but also help us to achieve our goals towards sustainable future. So thank you for doing that.
One quick thought on that, by the
Yeah.
way. Sometimes people ask us, like, but you're cutting the cost down. Don't the Intels of the world hate you? No, the point here is everybody wants AI to be more efficient because then there will be more usage of AI. We're
Exactly.
at such infancy of this revolution that if you can massively reduce the per unit cost of AI, you're going to see a lot more consumption of AI. The last year, people have barely scratched the surface. They're beginning to experiment. The moment they try to adopt at scale, the budgets, the cost is going to go through the roof and the resources won't be there. So what we are doing doesn't hurt anyone. It just increases the adoption of AI. There is enough
Exactly.
adoption to go around. Don't worry about losing
Yeah,
money.
very well put. And I totally agree with you, right? And then by the way, I came across this article titled Intel Xeon Processors Accelerate Gen AI Workloads with Able. And it claims that this partnership you have with Intel offers 55 times better TCO for AI applications. I was just fascinated to even see that 50 times. So could you elaborate on how this improvement is achieved without increasing complexity for customers?
It's that same serverless story we were talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from a customer's perspective, they came in and asked a question, the retrieval augmented generation use case. Now, without using something serverless, what you would do is you would have a vector database running on a server somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that vector database is costing you money whether or not you ask questions of it, because it has to sit around and be available, right? And quite often what people will do is they'll stuff a bunch of data in because, hey, why not, right? And you're paying for it all the time. If you step back, this is exactly what caused the problem with Hadoop. People used to like Hadoop until so much data got put into Hadoop that it was costing too much money and you were being charged money whether or not you were accessing it.
Mm-hmm.
What serverless does is, yes, I still have to process the data when it comes in, no free lunch there, but the system doesn't have to sit around for the potential that a question will come. And now what the system can do is when the query comes in, it quickly answers it and shuts itself down. That gives you a massive saving on its own. So vector DB savings going from servers to serverless is probably about a 50x cost differential by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the interesting things there is you are also running inside the customer's cloud in the able situation. So there are some serverless technologies out there where the data has to go to the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
That's not secure enough. In our case, it's running in the cloud. The second part of this is the small language model. Now, one of the interesting things with small language models is you typically have to fine-tune them. You have to customize them to your workload because they're not very generalizable. They're not as good as the large language model for just generic tasks. But when you specialize them, they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
But now you have a problem. I have to run multiple specialized models on multiple servers. These small use cases are not getting used all the time. So once again, the servers are just sitting around doing nothing. But now if you make that serverless, the model just comes up when it's needed and it's done. Now, we have to do a lot of optimization around that because if we just did this in a stupid way, it wouldn't be very efficient because you'd be waiting for a long time for these serverless instances to come up. But what we did is we have the model serverless instance the same, but for each use case, we use something called a LoRa, which is a model weights. So you use to bring up the right model weights, but the actual container with the model is the same. That's how you can get efficiency, latency improvements. And that's one of the things we benchmarked with Intel as well. We didn't just show the numbers on the cost. We actually showed that the latency was good enough, that you could get the question answered fast enough. That combination is what creates value. Fast enough, much lower cost.
Yeah, that's really profound, right? So let's switch gear a little bit, Arjit, and that's looking ahead. What other advancement can we really expect from Intel-Able partnership that would continue to elevate AI or generative AI in enterprise?
I think the most important thing you're going to know about this market is nobody knows what's going to happen with this market, right? Things are changing extremely fast. But what we believe is any set of organizations that are getting many projects done all the time. When we say, hey, we are getting something done in 30 days, in 5 days, etc., what that's giving us is many opportunities to learn. The faster you can do these things, the faster you run into landmines, the faster you learn what to fix. Whereas organizations that are taking 9 months to get these projects done, their learning cycle is much too slow. In fact, the tech landscape is changing so fast that if you're doing something in 9 months, it's legacy by the time you're done. So I think Intel and Able is very well positioned because we are learning so fast, because we are iterating so fast. And whatever happens over the next several years, I think the organizations that iterate faster are going to win over the ones who don't.
Yeah, I echo that. I mean, 9 months is not acceptable, right? It's just too long. But thank you, Arjit, for sharing your insights on Gen AI innovation for enterprise agility. Here are actually my 4 key takeaways. Number 1 is Able's serverless first approach, powered by Intel processors and AVX 512 technology that enables an end-to-end serverless Gen AI on CPUs that handle the entire RAG process. This optimizes the AI workflow from data ingest to deployment and reduces costs associated with AI initiative. I love the fact that you have the customer stay inside a customer cloud, right, to make it more secure. And number two is Able's impact from AI in 30 days program. You actually partners with Intel for that as well. That really demonstrates the ability to deliver measurable business impact swiftly, right? You mentioned about their customers who deliver the result in 2 days or 5 days, just fascinating. Number three is the collaboration with Intel enhances your Able's ability to offer scalable AI solutions. We're talking about leveraging Intel's processors to achieve superior performance and efficiency and reducing the total cost of ownership by up to 55 times. Fascinating. And lastly, looking ahead, I'm glad to hear from you that no one can predict what the future holds, right? The future advancement. However, the Intel-Able partnership will continue to optimize AI workflow and enhance infrastructure efficiencies with the goal to democratize AI for everybody, right? Thank you so much, Arijit, for highlighting Able's partnership with Intel. And thank you, Intel and Able, for enabling organizations to make quicker, better, strategic, and tactical decisions that deliver business value swiftly. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.